More than half the serious crime in the United States is committed by kids in their teens or younger. More than half. Well, this story, Crime and Very Little Punishment, is about that, and about our system of juvenile justice. It is also a rather depressing report about the conditions of ghetto life that breed that crime. To learn more about that ghetto world, we spent some time with two streetwise Harlem policemen. Tommy Lumpkin on the left and Tony Carter on the right are a couple of plainclothes New York cops who have spent years dealing with street crime. Officer Lumpkin has a master's degree in psychology, but what he learned at the university, he says, has little to do with the bleak reality about kids that he has learned on the streets of Harlem's 25th precinct.
There's no law here. There's no rules. Nothing is normal here. We deal with kids in the streets here, and my God, the hopelessness of it all really grabs you.
This is the beat officers Lumpkin and Carter cover, a Harlem side street. As neighbors casually look on, a group of kids try to break into a telephone company truck. They're after anything they can sell. In New York City, the number of kids arrested by the police has jumped from 3,400 in 1950 to more than 26,000 last year. About 5,800 of them for burglaries, 4,700 for robberies, 3,300 grand larcenies, 1,000 felonious assaults, 164 rapes, and 29 murders, all by kids under 16. And those are only the ones who get caught.
You gotta survive here, huh? No matter how hard you work, everybody's gonna steal.
Any poor area.
The lights are on, they steal. Lights go out, they're gonna steal.
These young men are veterans of the streets. Nowadays, they say they're going straight, but they know the world of the ghetto kid.
The whole value is $1 bill out here in the street. This is my baby brother right here. He been to jail. I've been to jail. And our father told us while we was coming up, the only friend you got is $1 bill.
And that's the way the kids feel.
That's right.
Take a look at the meters. You'll notice how many of them are missing heads. The company that sold these meters to the city sold them on the basis of the fact that they were supposedly theft-proof. And they are. You can't break into them. So the kids just take the whole head right off the pole, take the head home, and they work on them at their leisure. What about that kid? What was he, 15 years old? He had $8,000 on him and a brand new Seville, and he had a guy that he hired to drive him around because he was too young to get a driver's license.
That's right.
He had a wad of money that he had a hole like this in his hands like this. I mean, he had it like this. It was sandwiched, and he held his hands out.
You know, a kid can run up to an old lady and snatch her pocketbook. How much resistance can she put up? They're actually afraid to come out at night. They're afraid because they're easy victims. They're easy prey. We've had extortion rings going around up here which involve nothing but juveniles. Young kids, 14, 15 years old, in the gangs that were terrorizing the store owners. Buying a gun out in the streets is like buying candy in a candy store.
Officers Carter and Lumpkin at the precinct house. If it's the community that is suffering, why doesn't the community react?
If you, as a citizen and a member of the Harlem community, decide that you want to get involved in something that's taking place on the street, you may get your head blown off. Do you understand that?
By a kid.
That's right. Right then.
Stay out.
That's right. They have the community terrorized. That's correct.
How many robberies or whatever have you committed?
Oh, no, I don't remember. I know it was a lot.
Maybe 100.
More than that, probably.
And you've been busted 23 times. How old are you now?
16.
How long you been doing it?
Since I was 9.
These kids are juvenile criminals in a detention home in New York. But they can come and go daily to jobs, and they can get weekend passes to go home. You've been busted for 18. How many robberies do you think you committed?
About 200 or something.
With a gun? Sometimes?
Sometimes. Not really to use it.
Just to carry it?
Yeah, just like if you turn on me with something,
yeah,
I got protection.
Yeah. Muggings?
Yeah. You go downtown, just like walk up to somebody, like, instead of them struggling, they just give it to you. Just take it and you leave.
It doesn't make any difference what color. You still want money, you're going to rip it off, unless your parents have it.
when a kid do get something like $100, $200 in his pocket, he go out there buying some clothes or whatever. So for the money be going and he want more, he go rob something else.
And the parents know what's going on?
Of course they do.
They know their kids are criminals?
In many cases, they feel helpless to deal with that.
How many times have your kids been arrested?
Oh boy, I don't know. I really don't know.
I mean, let's face facts. If I had a kid and he came home with a $500 moped, I damn sure want to know where he got it from and how he got the money for it, right? But up here, you know, you got it, you got it. That's all it is to it.
You're talking about a situation where, more often than not, because a parent is in fact a parent, single parent, and a woman who's dealing with a man-child, a boy who chronologically is a boy, but emotionally he is a man. And she's dealing with that within a milieu which places a great deal of importance on the macho image. This kid has to be a man.
I can give you an example of the kind of weapons I'm taking off elementary school children. This is my collection. This, by the way, Mike, is mace. And as you can see, this drawer is filled with this. Now, elementary school kids.
This is the kids in this school are from 6 to 12?
That's right, basically.
Dr. Winston Robbins is principal of PS9 on the edge of a slum area. He has to deal with some violent kids.
After 22 years, I'm thinking, well, maybe it's time for me to get out. Because the type of child that's coming into the school today, I don't know how to handle some of these youngsters.
You know, like you tell these kids, hey, you can't get ahead unless you get an education. And the kids will say, well, what's an education for? If I go to school, I get a high school diploma, I go out there, I still can't get a decent job. Right?
That's right. You're talking to kids who see a guy who's a high school dropout stand on a corner and sell narcotics and make $10, $12, $13, $14,000 in an hour. In an hour. 1 hour. There's no way you can tell that kid that crime doesn't pay.
I am told that you make for yourself. You'll net over $100,000 a year.
If you have a good year.
He began as a delivery boy when he was 12. Shortly afterward, he was a numbers runner. Today, at 22, he claims to be the youngest numbers banker in New York. The kids look up to him, and they don't mess with him.
There's a lot of numbers bankers that have their own, well, we call it a SWAT team. You know, when somebody gets out of line, you call on these people to take care of it.
And by take care of it, if it's necessary to...
If it's necessary to kill somebody, that's what they'll do.
When they use that criterion of money, the only people that they can identify with is the numbers banker, the drug pusher, or the successful stick-up man. And there are a number of them. There are people who go out and stick up places. It's a business.
Look at that little 11-year-old boy downtown Harlem selling big dope.
This is an 11-year-old kid.
Regardless.
Selling dope. Making a lot of money. Am I right?
Yeah, he was making money. We're glad to see him made it. He made it.
Why wouldn't you do it? Dig us in. Why wouldn't you do it? If you was 11, no, you can't go to jail. Wouldn't you do it?
The young man may be right. A recent survey shows that of every 100 kids arrested for a serious crime in New York, only 44 wind up in front of a family court judge, and only 3, that's right, 3 kids get locked up.
The numbers, it isn't geared to deal with the numbers of kids that pour into that system every year. They don't have placement capabilities. They don't have probation capabilities. They don't even have investigation capabilities.
Do you guys regard the family court as a joke? Carlos?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Why?
Hey, I get in, do about a week, 2 months, something like that. Then like my mother get me out, like go back out and rob again.
The judges in family court, do they know the ghetto?
No, they don't. They're as removed from the ghetto as we are from the moon right now. I mean, they don't know.
So you laugh at the judges? You laugh at the courts?
Yeah.
I don't believe they laugh at me, and I don't believe they laugh at some of the men I know in this court and ladies in this court.
Julian Hurts has been a family court judge for the past 6 months. One of the only family court judges, past or present, who would agree to a filmed interview.
I try to be fair, and I try to comport with the spirit of the law, and that is that we are talking about children in this court, or people who are, in the eyes of the law, still not adults. And the state holds hope for those people being rehabilitated where that's possible.
Ivan Sobel runs a Harlem clothing store that has been repeatedly broken into by kids. Now, you go down to family court?
I've been down here numerous times.
And?
Nothing happens.
What do you mean?
You go down again, you go down again, nothing happens. At the end of it, kids are in front of the store the next morning, laughing that nothing happened. You go to court and they dismiss it. Or they 3 months in custody to parents. This is the extent of the total punishment that happens. So if that's the chance, why not try to steal it first? The last 2 kids that broke in here, that were caught, were 15 years old. They were the last ones to get caught.
So you go down to family court, and what happened?
Down to family court, they put them on a court employment project. That was what they put them on.
What's that mean?
That instead of arresting them, they find a job for them.
Did they?
Yeah, they did. I gave them a job in another business of mine, not in this one here. I had a trucking business.
Right.
The same 2 kids that I gave the job to stole about $2,000 from me on the other job.
What kind of kids are these, Mr. Sobel?
Young kids, very nice kids. When you see them and you talk to them, they're very, very nice kids. Kids that have broken in here are my regular customers.
For those kids who are caught and do get sent away, some make it, but many don't. Eric Saunders was an orphan. He started in juvenile crime, but he made good. Today, he's house father at this detention home.
Eric, tell me something. You know the program here. You're familiar with youngsters like this. How many of these kids are going to make it straight?
I'd say half.
Half? There's 7 of you. Eric says only half of you are going to make it. Which half is not going to make it?
I don't think Keith's going to make it.
You don't think that Keith is going to make it? Why not?
Nah, still too much.
He steals too much.
He goes out there on his weekends or his half a day, whatever he got. Go out there burglarizing places.
Still?
Yeah.
Keith, you've been involved in burglaries 3 or 4 times since you've been here in this house, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think he can make it either. He did things since I've been here. You know, I know a lot of people ain't did things since I've been here and since they've been here. Yeah. Sometimes word don't get around.
In fact, one of the other youngsters, Kenneth, had also recently gotten into trouble. During a weekend home leave, he had run into a couple of his old ghetto pals, broken into a freight car, and been picked up by the cops. Why did he do it?
I don't know. I just wanted money that day.
Kenneth? Are you gonna wind up going straight, do you think?
I don't know. I'll just be thinking about getting out.
How do you support yourself when you get out?
I don't know. I don't think about that.
Keith, you get out of the program. You've been a crook. You've been a robber. You've been a mugger. You got no mother or father. What do you do?
Me? What?
You get out of the program. Where do you go?
Who, me? I don't know.
Who takes care of you? Where do you live?
Me? From program to program.
From program to program, Keith and the rest are kids of a subclass, unreachable, many of them, not just in Harlem, in cities all across the country. Lots of them will wind up in prison, and we'll need more prisons to hold them, permanent prisons, for an entire subclass of our affluent society. It's hard to feel sorry for them if you've been mugged or robbed or raped by one of them, if you've been one of their victims. But some who work with the kids call them the victims. Victims of uncaring or non-existent families, victims of bad schools or uncaring communities. And almost no one sees this nation willing to commit the resources, the time, the money, the care, to deal with these kids, to break the pattern. It is depressing, it can be frightening to spend much time with these kids. They threaten us, not just with violence and crime. They threaten us because they tell us something devastating about what has happened in our cities, and because no one really knows what to do about them.
Why do you think, Daphne, that crime, they say, amongst the crime being committed by the young people is going up all the time?
I don't know.
You got any idea at all about that sort of thing? I mean, how about you, Rich?
It's mostly the parents that don't care damn about it, because without the action, the kids wouldn't be in too much problems or trouble. Like I said, if the parents care about somebody, they'll try to see what their kids are really, really involved with. But most of the parents, they think about what they got to do. And most of the mothers, all they think about is, welfare and this and that. They don't give the kids a chance to adjust themselves. So therefore, they're going to have to do something either way it goes. They're going to have to adjust themselves with their friends and, pick up bad habits.
So you think the problem then is with the parents?
Not only the parents, it's some of the kids' problem too, because some parents are good, to their kids, but kids just don't regret it because they want more than what they could get.
Do you agree with that, Daphne?
Yeah.
Do you think that the problem is with the parents or any other areas you... Very good. Anything else, Rich?
Nah. That's all I can think of. Like Daphne, she probably be scared, but she got a whole lot of action when she's around by herself. Like sometimes we have, like a committee talk with, other kids the same age as us, trying to tell them, what to don't do wrong and what to do right. But it's most based on the kids' mind, because some of them, they want to get out there and do more than what they're supposed to do and, get locked up behind it. But, me, I'm not bragging about myself. I've never been locked up yet, and I'm proud of it, and I don't want to get locked up.
The way things are going, being locked up.
I mean, there's a chance to get locked up if there's a chance to not get locked up, because if it's all in your mind, if you don't want to get locked up, you ain't got no chance to get locked up. It's just in your, you got to have a good mind to just stay out of trouble without getting into it.
With all of the problems that are out here, do you think it's a very good chance for a kid to avoid getting into trouble? What are the chances for a kid to stay out of trouble? Does he have a very good chance at it?
Just know how to pick his friends and involve in his own self. Because if he go and, say like, you're my friend, somebody older than him, all they're going to do is lead him in the wrong way. And when he find out it's going to be too late, he's going to be doing something that he never did before. Ain't nobody perfect. Everybody, like everybody's out here, they got their own bag, but you got to believe in yourself to don't get in something else.
I want you to be serious now, Susie, because this is going out all over the country, right?
Yeah.
So I want you to be serious. Susie, now the FBI just serious crimes. And we've asked a lot of judges and police kind of folk what they think the reasons are, but I'd like to come down here and ask you, why do you think kids today are getting into more and more trouble?
I don't understand you at all.
But go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't understand you. I don't know.
Well, what do you mean there's no money? Explain that,
Explain it?
Yeah, serious fact of life that you have to rob, you say, to get money.
Or work. If you're old enough.
Tell them exactly what's happening down here.
What's happening down here, man?
What do you think the reason is that kids are getting into more and more trouble these days?
They ain't got nothing better else to do. I mean, these gangs out here, they don't mean nothing to me, but they want territory. They fighting for territory and shit, man. That ain't nothing.
Well, I mean, over and above just the gang wars, why do you think the kids are committing the robberies and the burglaries and the raping and the assaults? Why do you think all of that's happening?
Yes, they trying to prove something. They big or whatever. I can't really tell you, but I guess the gang. They have to come through and here and everything else. That's all right, man.
The main reason kids are getting into trouble.
I get in trouble myself. I don't know.
Huh?
I get in trouble myself.
Why do you get into trouble?
Because I want to get in trouble,
Huh? Why do you get into trouble?
See, that's my business. Yeah, that right there's my business. I can tell my business.
Well, I understand it's your business, but do you get into trouble because you want to be into trouble? Do you get into trouble because...
I get snagged, that's it. I get busted.
But what's happening that gets you busted?
What?
What's happening?
Around the lower side? Not much.
Why do you think you stay in and out of trouble?
Yeah.
You think you're going to be in and out of trouble all of your life?
Not all of my life, you know. That's all, of course. I want to do something for myself, too.
When are you going to get it together?
I don't know.
When are you going to try?
Huh?
When are you going to try?
One of these days.
Until then? What about until then?
Until then, I don't know what's up.
Washington, the president will hit hard on the crime issue. As Rita Braver reported, the president is also throwing his support to a popular proposal that would send criminals to prison for life when they've been convicted of violent crimes 3 times. Correspondent Richard Threlkeld has more on that.
By endorsing 3 strikes and you're out, the president's climbing on a political bandwagon that's already rolling. More than half the states are now considering laws to put repeatedly convicted violent criminals away for life. And fellow Democrats like New York Governor Mario Cuomo, who's running for a 4th term, seem determined to be just as tough on crime as the Republicans have traditionally been.
In baseball, it's 3 strikes and you're out. In dealing with violent crime, it should be 3 strikes and you're in permanently.
But even its supporters concede there are already plenty of laws to put hardcore criminals away for long terms, and critics insist more harsh penalties won't help.
There's no evidence anywhere that this will be effective in reducing violent crime, which is what people care about.
But 3 strikes is a powerful symbol. It's now on the ballot in California, propelled by the reaction to the Polly Klaas tragedy, the 12-year-old girl allegedly kidnapped and killed by a man with a long criminal record.
I just think the public is fed up with a justice system that seems to work more for the criminals than it does for the victims.
Democrats and Republicans will have to be careful not to get into a bidding war about who's tougher on crime. Why not 2 strikes and you're out? Or 1? At $21,000 per inmate per year in a federal prison, that could get pretty expensive. Richard Threlkeld, CBS
will soon
News,
take up
New York.
President Clinton's call for the anti-crime measure known as 3 strikes and you're out. It would mean life imprisonment after 3 violent felony convictions. California voters are already debating the idea. Bill Whitaker reports.
Miguel Pena is a 7-time loser, a convicted felon in and out of prison for armed robbery, burglary, drugs.
Because I got addicted to heroin, and it became a vicious cycle.
He says with another chance and a job, he could be a winner.
With a little help, man, people can change.
But these days, California is not in a forgiving mood.
7 times he's been in prison, and he still wants more chances?
Like most Californians, Harriet Salerno is fed up with crime. Her daughter, Katina, was murdered 15 years ago. Now she's a leader in the petition drive to get 3 strikes you're out on the state ballot. The move to lock 3-time felons away for life caught fire after the arrest of violent repeat offender Richard Allen Davis for the kidnapped murder of Polly Klaas.
Yes, the people have spoken out that they want to be safe, and they're willing to pay it.
California already has more prisons and prisoners than any other state, yet the crime rate keeps rising. 3 strikes you're out could double the population and cost $3 billion more a year. Critics call it fear-driven and simplistic.
They're ready to vote their fears without reading any of the fine print or indeed any of the big print.
And clearly, if more prisons were the answer to the crime problem, California would be a crime-free utopia.
Schiraldi says reserve prisons for violent felons, rehabilitate the majority who are nonviolent more cheaply at halfway houses like this one he runs in San Francisco, with a proven track record of keeping felons from returning to crime, and where Miguel Pena is looking for the chance he wouldn't get under 3 strikes you're out.
I'd be sitting in a jail cell for life, my life would be ruined.
This day he went on a job interview.
You got this chance. Don't blow it.
While many in California are asking how many chances are enough. Bill Whitaker, CBS News.
Just how much Americans are fed up with violent crime is evident tonight on several fronts. As correspondent Linda Douglas reports, there's a new anti-crime drive underway from the president on down, even as the body count continues to rise.
Typical scenes in America's big cities. In Chicago, 8 people murdered since Friday. In Washington, D.C., 16 people shot dead in 9 days. Violent crime is an issue that haunts the president and one he plans to address with new proposals next month. This weekend, he warned his ambitious domestic programs won't succeed if America's social fabric continues to unravel.
But unless we deal with the ravages of crime and drug and violence, none of the other things we seek to do will ever take us where we need to go.
In an emotional speech at a Memphis church this weekend, Mr. Clinton argued if Martin Luther King Jr. could see the violent world of America's urban teens, he might think his fight for freedom was in vain.
The freedom to die before you're a teenager is not what Martin Luther King lived and died for. How would we explain to him all these kids getting killed and killing each other? How would we justify the things that we permit that no other country in the world would permit?
Today in Chicago, mayors and police chiefs met to come up with proposals to fight crime. The White House says the president's crime-fighting agenda will stress personal responsibility, intact families, and jobs. But the Senate, working on its own crime bill this week, has taken a different tack, pushing legislation that is top-heavy with punishment, like $6 billion for more prisons, longer prison terms, and a provision to prosecute some young teens as adults.
There is a mood here that if someone came to the floor and said, you know, we should barb wire the ankles of anyone who jaywalks, I suspect it would pass.
This week, the Senate will vote on its crime bill, a $22 billion proposal that could be watered down significantly in negotiations with the House. But the mood of the public is fierce, and Congress may not be allowed to go home for the holidays until it has agreed on crime-fighting legislation. Linda Douglas, CBS News,
Today's White House
Washington.
photo op aside, what impact might the new crime bill actually have out on the streets? Correspondent Jim Stewart has been investigating a case in point.
In Prince George's County, Maryland, where crime is up 5% overall, Police Chief David Mitchell already has plans for his slice of the crime bill pie.
What I would do immediately is increase community policing. I'd put more police officers on the street to not only reduce crime, but to reduce the fear of crime.
Good morning, Response Center.
While at the Justice Department, cops all around the country are calling with the same question.
Find out what funding is available to law enforcement agencies from the crime bill recently passed.
The answer is $30 billion. About a third of it will help cities hire more police for the streets if they pick up part of the tab themselves. There's also money for crime prevention programs and a $10 billion chunk to build new prisons. And even though many feel there are too many strings attached to the money, police chief said today they're grateful nonetheless.
We're in a war right now with the gangs in Chicago. This is not utopia, this crime bill, but it's a start.
For Buffalo, we're very excited about it. It's going to provide some technology and training, just the types of things that we need to make it a safer city.
That's 10-4.
What they want in Prince George's County is a new satellite precinct and maybe to beef up their domestic violence prevention.
Give us more officers, we know exactly where to put them.
But the trick may be in keeping them there. Funding for the crime bill is good for only 6 years. After that, the money goes away, even if the crime hasn't. Jim Stewart, CBS News, Washington.
Jerry Dwayne Williams didn't have to steal a slice of pizza from a group of children. Prosecutors say he had $30 in his pocket at the time. Today, Williams was sentenced to 25 years to life. The convicted pizza thief has 3 strikes under California law.
Probation is denied. The defendant is sentenced to state prison for the term of 25 years to life.
Williams told his attorney he expected to get 25 years to life for his crime. He stole the slice of pizza from a group of young kids on the Redondo Beach pier. His lawyer says the punishment doesn't fit the crime.
It just seems to me that for what would be a misdemeanor, if a person with no record did it, that to sentence somebody to 25 years to life because of his record, under any circumstances, is excessive.
Williams had 4 felony convictions before stealing the slice of pizza. In this case, he was convicted of felony petty theft. The prosecutor says Williams, in effect, took candy from a baby. One of the victims was 7 years old when Williams stole his pizza.
Normal people of goodwill don't pick on kids. I mean, he's a 27-year-old, 6'5" man, and he's picking on a 7-year-old child. In my book, that's a mean-spirited bully.
Crime Watch groups were in the court when Judge Donald Pitts handed down the sentence. They believe this is a major victory that will only strengthen the law.
And hopefully it'll send a message to the other potential repeat offenders out there, or those who are facing 3 strikes. Don't do it in California.
Williams says he will appeal his 25 to life sentence. His case could end up before the California Supreme Court. In Torrance, Carlos Bain, Channel 9 News.
Pre-dug holes, they help.
Breaking ground, breaking tradition. On this site, the first Florida prison privately operated.
It's pretty easy to say the current system isn't really working that well. Part of it is because the current system hadn't had enough beds. But part of it is that, again, we've been warehousing people in some places where we need to do more than that.
Unlike state-run facilities, the new prison will have on-site drug treatment and rehabilitation, all at a cheaper price. It costs Florida about $45 a day for each prisoner. U.S. Corrections says they can do it for $39 a day.
Vendors do not have to wait on invoicing the government for their money, and food is a large cost. That's a large area of savings, and it's really the system in the government that doesn't allow it to operate like we do.
The 700-bed facility is going up in Gadsden County, an area struggling with poverty and unemployment. The prison will mean 230 jobs at an average salary of $16,000 a year. Not exorbitant, but more than many of the minimum wage jobs here.
Because I'm a carpenter and a cement finisher, I think it'd be a great thing for my own self.
Although some are skeptical in this former tobacco farming region.
Some of them ain't gonna qualify for them jobs for the standard that they asking for.
Still, Florida is already looking into building more private prisons. For prisoners caught in a vicious cycle, it could mean help and hope, and perhaps a little bit of both for a region caught in a desperate struggle of survival. In Gadsden County, Joan Murray.
13,000 of Florida's 66,000 prison inmates are repeat offenders, and Florida lawmakers are pushing a plan known as 3 strikes, which keeps habitual criminals locked up longer.
We think that enhanced penalties equate to crime prevention.
If the plan's adopted, continual crooks would stay in the slammer for their full sentence with no early release.
And I think that's an important message. We're not going to mollycoddle prisoners any longer in the state of Florida.
But because violators of the state's tough new 10/20 life gun law will already take up space in cells, the increased incarcerations under 3 strikes could cost $32 million. Lawmakers disagree with that.
We're hoping that it'll be a deterrent. In a perfect world, we wouldn't need more prison beds.
Lawmakers don't think this lengthy 100-page piece of legislation will require any additional prison beds because they think it will keep criminals from committing additional crimes.
We always hope that we keep more people out of prison through the deterrent effect than we actually end up locking up.
Initially, hundreds more convicts could be committed each year. Right now, Florida has just 4,000 open prison beds, but Senator Lee thinks that's enough.
We've come to learn there are extra prison beds to serve a population of felons of this size.
If the law passes with the blessing of Governor Bush, some of the empty cots could be occupied as early as July. In Tallahassee,
the toughest criminal law in the land was the subject of a major U.S. Supreme Court case this year. The decision, announced months after we first broadcast our story, was as deeply divided as the controversy surrounding the law itself. California's version of the 3 strikes law. The 3 strikes law says if someone commits a 3rd felony after committing 2 prior similar felonies, then the sentence is a mandatory 25 years to life. In this case, Leandro Andrade was given not 1 but 2 sentences of 25 years to life for stealing 9 children's videotapes, including Snow White, Cinderella, and Free Willy 2. The tapes were worth $153.54. Lawyers for the state of California argued that the penalty is both correct and constitutional. The other side argued that Leandro Andrade's punishment is cruel and unusual.
I'm not a killer. I'm not a rapist. I'm really not a bad person once you get to know me. So do I deserve to be locked up for the rest of my life because a certain judge feels that's what he deserves?
This is Leandro Andrade, the 44-year-old convict who may make legal history. Under his sentence, he will be 87 years old before being eligible for parole. We are the only news organization until now to get inside prison to interview him.
I understand what I did was wrong, and I knew I had to be punished. And you had to pay for that crime, for the mistakes that you make in life. Okay, but I wasn't aware that for that little mistake, I was going to receive a 25 to life sentence.
In your opinion, what sentence would be a just sentence for you?
Well, for a petty theft, it carries maximum 3 years. You know, that's what I believe I should be doing for petty theft. You know, because I didn't kill anybody. I didn't hurt anybody.
The biggest cases of the U.S. Supreme Court often begin in the smallest ways, and this one fits the pattern. It was November 1995, and Leandro Andrade, a 9-year U.S. Army veteran and lifelong heroin addict, wanted videotapes, he says, as Christmas gifts for his nieces. So he went to this Kmart, and a couple of weeks later, to another down the road. He tried to steal the videos and was caught at both stores, caught by surveillance cameras. There he is, putting a tape inside the back of his trousers, and then caught by security guards.
On the way out of the store, they approached me, and they asked me if I had any concealed tapes, and I said, yes. I didn't argue with them, I didn't fight with them or anything like that.
This is the courthouse where Leandro Andrade was sentenced to life in prison. It happened because California is the only state in the Union where a misdemeanor crime can be made into a third strike. They call it a wobbler. This is how it works. So long as the first two crimes were clearly felonies, a third crime, be it stealing a bike or a pizza, as happened to others, or kids' videos in Andrade's case, can send a person to prison for a minimum of 25 years to life. And worse for Andrade was getting the 25 years doubled for 2 cases of shoplifting, his third and fourth strikes under California's law. His first 2 strikes were for home burglaries. Neither involved violence. Both were committed back in 1983. Did you carry a weapon?
No, I didn't. No.
So if someone had startled you during these burglaries, you were in a position to shoot them or knife them?
Oh, no.
Violence was on the minds of California voters when they overwhelmingly passed the 3 strikes law in 1994.
And there's Polly?
The law's passage was triggered by the vicious murder of 12-year-old Polly Klaas, who was snatched from her home, raped and strangled to death by a drifter named Richard Allen Davis, who had a long and violent criminal record. Elected officials like Senator Dianne Feinstein were strong supporters of the law.
She makes us all the more determined to tighten our laws to keep repeat offenders behind bars.
Today, over half the states have some kind of 3 strikes law. California's is the toughest.
The law was about putting the Richard Allen Davises behind bars for life, not the shoplifters.
Erwin Chemerinsky is Andrade's lawyer. But why should the Supreme Court take this case? What constitutional issue is involved?
The 8th Amendment to the Constitution prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. For at least a century, the Supreme Court has said that grossly disproportionate penalties violate the cruel and unusual punishment clause. If any punishment is grossly disproportionate, it's stealing 150,000 videotapes and getting 50 years to life in prison.
It's not cruel and unusual because we're not punishing him for what up front might appear to be a minor crime, the theft of the videotapes. We are punishing him for failing to heed the lessons of his prior history.
Grover Merritt is the California prosecutor leading the fight to keep Andrade in prison. He takes a DA's satisfaction in disclosing what has not been widely revealed, that Andrade has a long list of crimes on his rap sheet.
He's been a thief. He's been a burglar. He's crept into people's homes. He's dealt marijuana in sufficient quantity to get arrested and prosecuted by the federal government twice. He escaped from a federal prison. And after that, he still committed a petty theft in Orange County, and then he came here to steal from our Kmarts.
But what Grover Merritt is not saying is that none of Andrade's crimes were violent. And there's more. Under the law, a third strike can only be called if the first 2 strikes were for similar crimes. Andrade's downfall was committing a handful of burglaries back in 1983. Andrade's lawyer, Erwin Chemerinsky, a professor at the University of Southern California Law School, was practicing for the Supreme Court hearing. His audience, lawyers playing the roles of Supreme Court justices.
It would violate the 8th Amendment. Under the state's...
When he takes his case before the real justices, he will be arguing not that the 3 strikes law is unconstitutional, just Andrade's sentence.
It's when it becomes 50 years in prison that it's undesirable. And there's an irrationality to California law. If Andrade's prior offenses had been rape and murder, the most he could have received as a sentence for stealing videotapes was a year in jail. But because his prior crimes had been property offenses, he got 50 years in prison. That's just irrational.
This is where Leandro Andrade is doing his time, Tehachapi Prison, and he has lots of company. More than 7,000 California convicts have been struck out, and more than half of them were convicted of nonviolent crimes. These are 3 of them we found at random. Robert James, Darren Stokes, and Greg Pearson. Like Andrade, all had substance abuse addictions. All have lengthy criminal records, and except for James, who pulled a knife during a barroom brawl, none of their third strikes involved violence.
For what crime are you convicted that got you the third strike?
Petty theft. I shoplifted some food and beer from the supermarket. I could have done without it.
Possession of stolen property. Possession of narcotics. I got 3 life sentences for it.
There are some people who look at it and say, you know what? These guys have done bad things. They're bad people. To those people, you say what?
I say that they should take into consideration the severity of the crime, the individual's background, if they could be helped or not. Because basically they're just throwing away the key on us.
And their only key to opening the prison doors is Leandro Andrade. If Andrade wins, hundreds of California non-violent 3-strikers could go free, on the grounds their punishments are also cruel and unusual. If Andrade loses, most will never see the outside of these prison walls.
We gotta hold up the bloodstained banner.
3-strikers do have people rooting for them. They call themselves FACS, Families to Amend California's 3 Strikes. They held a vigil.
I light this candle for my Uncle Gary Ewing doing 25 years to life.
Their earlier efforts to amend the 3 Strikes law have failed, as even politicians sympathetic to their side don't want to appear soft on crime. So now they are hoping that the Supreme Court will help them by ruling for Andrade. California prosecutor Grover Merritt says their prayers deserve to go unanswered.
This is an individual for whom 3 Strikes was designed, and this is an individual who deserves to have had the full weight of it dropped on him.
The argument goes, look, this law was never intended to give the Andrades of the world 3 strikes and you finish and you're in prison for 50 to life. It was originally designed, it was originally passed to deal with vicious, murderous predators. True or untrue?
Well, it's designed to be what I think of as a street sweeping statute. You want to get people who have murders and robberies and rapes and burglaries in their backgrounds before somebody gets murdered or burglarized or raped or robbed.
But even some jurors who found Leandro Andrade guilty don't agree with his sentence, which was imposed by a judge at a separate hearing. And it turns out that Deborah Freeman, one of 2 forepersons on the Andrade jury, did not even know the sentence before we called her.
I was very surprised.
Tell me about that.
There are people in prison that have committed murder that are serving less years than this man is for selling or for stealing videotapes. I mean, it's ludicrous.
And the first time the other foreperson, Bridget George, heard the sentence was during this interview.
I tried not to allow my eyes to pop out of my head, but I was pretty shocked.
Fair or unfair to discover it as a wow reaction?
Very wow.
Very.
25 to life is wow. 50 to life is just incredibly out of this world to me for this particular crime.
Bridget George says only that Andrade deserves a Supreme Court review. Deborah Freeman goes further. Directly put, are you pulling for him to win before the Supreme Court?
Yes, I am.
You want him to win?
I do. I think that it is cruel and unusual punishment. 50 to life for stealing videotapes.
The only opinions that matter now are those of the 9 justices of the Supreme Court. We ask for predictions. You think you're going to win?
I'm very confident that we're going to win.
I think there are 6 possible justices who might be willing to say, this sentence violates the Constitution.
You expect to win?
In a situation like this, I had a law professor who used to say, I'd rather be a jockey than a bookie. That having been said, I would not be surprised to see 5, 4, 6, 3, something like that.
In favor of the state?
Yes.
Have you ever argued before the United States Supreme Court before?
This will be the first time.
Nervous?
Of course.
But not as nervous as some law-abiding Americans may be if 3 strikers are set free. And not as worried as some convicts like Leandro Andrade. People whose lives and futures hang on this single Supreme Court case.
I can't help but keep in mind that if I lose, Leandro Andrade's earliest possible parole date is year 2046 when he's 87 years old. I can't help but keep in mind, if I lose, then it's doubtful that there's going to be any successful challenges to the 3 strikes law.
Do you feel sorry for him?
In the sense that you would never want to see anybody get 50 to life, yes. But I think the criminal history at this point greatly outweighs any sympathy I might have for him.
The Supreme Court decision was as close and conflict-ridden as 9 justices can get. 5-4 against Andrade and upholding California's 3 strikes law.
Problem looks like. We asked John Blackstone to show us the prisons in California, which has its own mandatory sentencing for drug offenses.
In California, about 120,000 inmates are crowded into state prisons designed to hold just 80,000. Prison gymnasiums have been turned into dormitories, and even county jails are full. All this is part of the legacy of California's 3 strikes law passed in 1994. San Francisco's chief jailkeeper is Sheriff Ross Mirkarimi.
California seemed to be a leader in get tough on crime. That jammed up our prisons.
This is true, and it's important that we continue to optimize our response to public safety, but the goal is rehabilitation.
California's packed prisons have had limited success at rehabilitation. 63% of released felons in the state are back behind bars within 3 years. Statewide, recidivism rate is pretty high.
It's extremely high. In fact, I think it's failed in terms of the scorecard of how effective it's been.
So it shows that locking people up isn't the answer.
It is not.
Mirkarimi runs one of the few jail systems in the state that is not crowded. You actually have empty cells in here.
We do.
San Francisco stresses drug treatment programs and other community-based diversion programs that keep nonviolent offenders out of jail.
Other counties, even more conservative counties, and red and blue states, I think, are finally realizing they cannot prosecute or incarcerate their way out of the problem. Listen, the war on drugs has now entered its 5th decade, 50 years. I think the jury is in, and that the war on drugs has failed.
California is already backing away from harsh sentences for minor drug crimes, as Attorney General Holder recommended today. Last November, Californians voted to limit the 3 strikes law, Scott, so that most nonviolent crimes will no longer bring a life sentence.
John Blackstone in our San Francisco newsroom. John, thank you.